Well, folks, it's been a couple of months. We're back. The Zach with an H pod is live again. We got Graham Matthews. If you like wrestling, if you care about wrestling, this much for the audio listeners. It's a big range here. This is your guy. He's been covering it for more than 17 years now and been a fan for way longer. He and I go back to our Endicott College days. Graham Matthews, man, a pleasure to have you on today.
A pleasure indeed, Zach. What's going on? Thank you so much for having me on. And as I said before we hit record here, very much an honor for me to be the first guest back in a few months to kick off 2026. It's a big honor indeed. I'm looking forward to this.
And one nugget, folks, before we get into it, I want to add is that when I was starting out, when I was at Endicott, so Graham was a year ahead, we met at my accepted students day. And then 6 months later, when I did my first live show, Graham is the one that produced said show. It's the first time my voice was ever on air in a recorded fashion. This is the guy. You were the one that recorded it, sent me the archive file, and enabled me to get that thing up. So shout out to you for the assistance when I first started. And I can't believe, man, that was 11 and a half years ago.
Yeah, that is insane. I appreciate the shout out. No, I remember that like it was yesterday, being there for your first episode inside that closet of a radio room that we had at Endicott at that time. And then even the acceptance students day that you mentioned, going on almost 12 years now, a dozen years, which makes me feel old just saying that. But no, crazy. Time flies. And, we caught up in person for the first time since I think we both graduated only a few months ago in New York. And that was great to see that. I mean, obviously we've kept in touch over social media and stuff, but to see in person again in NYC was awesome as well. So it's been a great journey to see all this stuff. I mean, before we even get started here, just to see all the stuff that you've done, Zach, in the last 12 years at school and obviously after school as well has been a pleasure to see, and super proud of you and all your progress. And here we are today, full circle.
Appreciate it very much, man. So obviously we're reminiscing and we're going to do more of that because every Zach with an H, we go inside, start when they're young, and then we build up to the present. Graham, was wrestling your first passion, your very first passion, or was it something else?
It's a good question. It was not actually. I actually got into wrestling a lot later than most people. I've been watching now for almost 18 years, coming up in April, but I'm 30 now. But a lot of people a lot of wrestling fans my age started watching a lot younger when they were like 5, 6, 7. 6, 7 meme, I guess, in there. You can throw that in there if you want. But, it just wasn't what it was at that time. Not that it necessarily didn't appeal to me, but my parents would have never let me watch what was going on in the world of wrestling back in like the early 2000s when it was much more risque and I was only like 7 or 8 years old. So I got into it a lot later than most. My first like passion career wise was actually teaching. And I wanted to do that for a while as like a kid before I realized that was something I did not want to do. I always liked writing, but teaching was something I was like, I want to be an astronaut type of thing when I was a kid. Obviously this is more realistic than that, but then I kind of, pivoted at when I kind of discovered wrestling. But I think before wrestling, I liked, I guess like fandom wise, I was a big Scooby-Doo fan. I grew up a Sesame Street fan, loved Lilo and Stitch, still do. But I think wrestling was really the first thing that kind of captured me, and it's obviously more of a business, and it kind of encapsulated me from there.
Yeah, shout out Scooby-Doo in there. You never know what
classics, the OGs.
You never know what references you're going to get when you go to nostalgia. And fun fact, pup named Scooby-Doo is making its Cartoon Network return after 20 years for an episode.
Really? On Cartoon Network?
Yeah, on President's Day in the 10 a.m. slot, which I don't believe it occupied. If we're not going to get hung up on Scooby-Doo because this will be mostly about wrestling.
Sure.
But which they do have wrestling episodes, and John Cena did save them before. Let's not forget that.
That is correct, yeah.
But I think it was 9:30, right after Baby Looney Tunes.
That's crazy. Wait, so Pup Named Scooby-Doo was when? What was the air date on that? Because I was like, I think the show that I specifically watched may have been like 70s, 80s. Obviously, it aired.
Yeah, this was late 80s into the 90s, but we got the episodes every day in the 2000s.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I probably caught those episodes too. And then I love the movies. I was a big fan of the live action movies, the James Gunn movies, actually. I love those. Those
were James Gunn movies?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? The guy that made Guardians and Peacemaker, he made those movies before. He probably did other stuff before that, obviously. But yeah, those are, if you go back and watch them, you're like, okay, yeah, these are James Gunn movies.
Wow. All right. Yeah. I mean, that explains how we got the Bon Jovi music when Fred was in his showdown. That was the First movie. All right.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
all
that's
right.
the first movie.
Scooby-Doo, we move up to high school.
Sure.
So how did writing for your high school newspaper help you with your confidence in kind of knowing that you can get your voice out there?
Yeah, so I took a class. I don't think I started writing for my high school newspaper until I was in junior year of high. I don't even know if I could prior to that point. But we had a class, a journalism class in, high school, and by that point, I was already writing for Bleacher, doing, like, blogging and stuff like that, so I really took to the journalism class because it was something a lot of the stuff, like, skill-wise that I already knew or was already working on inadvertently and whatnot, and writing for the school paper was part of the class, and then I just kinda kept doing it after that. And it was like a quarterly thing. It wasn't like an every other week thing, but I contributed some pieces, and I liked the process of interviewing people, writing, finding a story. Not like hard journalism, which we'll get into because wrestling is obviously far from that, but
Yeah.
just the general notion of like wrestling and really just telling a story because that's any medium of television, wrestling itself, sports, and it's all about the stories, and that's what I kind of excelled most at was telling those stories and finding those stories and writing about those stories. So the paper itself really kind of helped me expand my skill set as a writer, getting guidance from the woman that was running it, who was my journalism teacher, and she was kind of a mentor to me for the remainder of my high school career. Helped me get a like a little mini scholarship going to college, which was really cool. So it really helped me kind of realize that this is something I can kind of do as a career. Because prior to that point, I just liked wrestling or just kind of just liked writing in general. Never really thought it was something I can make a career out of. And doing the newspaper kind of made me realize, well, there's actually something to this. I can actually potentially pursue this as something in college by going into journalism, which I did.
And from high school, we talk about the scholarship to Endicott College, in Beverly, Massachusetts. Why Endicott for you and what you wanted to get into and pursue?
Yeah, I just loved the school as soon as I toured it. My mom, shout out to my mom, actually was the one who turned me on to the school because she had a family friend who had a son that had played football there. And I think she had heard they had a good journalism program. So I toured that. I toured a few different schools. Quinnipiac here in Connecticut's also a great school. I ended up doing my master's there, some graduate classes there as well. Excellent school. But it was just something about Endicott that really stood out to me. It wasn't too far, but it wasn't like close. I didn't really want to go to college with people I went to high school with. That was a big factor for me. But like the campus was not super small, but it also wasn't super big. Like my brother had gone, he also went to journalism. He went to Syracuse, and I'm like, this place is too big. Not that I would even I don't know if I would even get into Syracuse, but like this school is just too big for me. I don't like the city vibes. Beverly, Endicott, obviously, as you know, Zach, is just very low key,
Yep.
very suburban, I guess might be the right word. And I
Yep.
just really like the school, just the atmosphere. Obviously, the program itself was great, but the program was great at all these other schools I looked at. But Endicott specifically, just something stood out to me about the atmosphere of the campus and the people there and how really, I mean, we talk about your radio show. That was really what stood out to me more than anything. I had toured you or I before I went to Endicott. And they said, yeah, you can kind of like shadow people your first year there, or you might get a show by like junior year. I'm like, not that whether I get a radio show first weekend is like a hit or miss, like that's going to determine whether I go there. But that was a significant factor that kind of stood out to me. And in Endicott, they were like, because it was such a low key program at that point, they were like, yeah, you could do a show as soon as you get here if you want. And they're very like flexible with what you can do a show on. I think I remember being at your acceptance students day or talking at one of those things a few years later or whatever and telling people. I think Ellie Pye, who ran the program at that point, shout out to Ellie, she's not there now. Or I think she doesn't do the radio rather, but she said you could do a show about the Smurfs if you wanted to. And I'm like, that's just anything really. I'm like, oh, that's really cool because wrestling's not a very popular topic, especially back then. So I'm like, I could do this from day one. So long answer, but just there's a lot of factors that contributed to my decision to go to Endicott.
Yeah, and on the ambiance and just the feels, 100% agree. Very cool to get on the air right away. I had my interest meeting on the second week of school. I
Mhm.
started, for example, the third week. I do
Yeah.
think it's important. And then I started broadcasting the second semester of my freshman year and did that for the next 7 semesters until I graduated. So I fully agree. And sometimes, you go to a small school in a quiet place and you kind of do your own thing in a loud way to enable yourself to get it. And you've obviously been able to do that as we transition, Graham, into the career part of the conversation. So Wrestle Rant, that was the name of your show at Endicott. That's been your brand for a long time, built a large following for it. So When did it start? How has it been able to take off so much? And is it everything that you expected it to be?
Probably more so. I mean, I'm not even really sure what I envisioned when I first started doing it, because really a lot of things that I do, I do it because it interests me. I mean, I guess like the writing, I got really lucky with writing because I was already somewhat decent at it, but I also just happen to like it too. So I'm very lucky that it's something I enjoy, but I'm good at, and it's not something I'm good at, but I hate, or it's something I love, but I'm not good at. I feel like it's a rare combination. So I got really lucky with that. But as far as the career part of it, it was, with Wrestle Rant and starting the brand and whatnot. I think when I was in elementary school or middle school, I think it was closer to like elementary school, I found like I really enjoyed making websites. Like I think one of the first websites I ever made was about every experiment in Lilo and Stitch, and just I don't know, there's just something dumb like that, like Disney stuff and kid stuff and whatever. And then as I got into wrestling, just kind of blogging about it, having my own fantasy wrestling organization, and just the process of putting something online for the public to consume, I guess. And this was all just stuff for me that I was doing. I wasn't really doing it for anyone else at that point. And then fast forward to 2010, the same year, that was kind of the turning point for me. I was a sophomore in high school at this point. That was kind of the turning point because I had just started writing for Bleacher Report, not as like a career, but it was kind of what helped me get my foot in the door as far as writing for them as like a job and stuff. But I started doing that. And then I had my own website where I'm like, I like reviewing the shows that I watch. I'm a big productive person. Like if I'm doing something, I like to maximize that I can out of it, which probably isn't healthy on certain fronts. But like if I'm watching a wrestling show, I like to write about it and review about it, or review the show and talk about it. And that's what I started doing. And social media really helped. I've enjoyed Twitter. Can be a cesspool sometimes, but getting the word out through that. And I'm still kind of learning with the other stuff like Instagram and TikTok I got to get on and all that other stuff. But
Mhm.
Twitter was really what kind of helped me build a community and, listening to other people's opinions and people caring about my opinion, which still kind of shocks me to this day. And that was really what kind of got my foot in the door and spreading the word. And also the Bleach Report thing helped too, because I would always plug my website and like my YouTube channel, stuff like that at the end of my articles. And then Wrestle Rant was something I was always doing on my YouTube channel as like something me reviewing the shows. My website originally was called Next Era Wrestling. So I had a show called Wrestle Rant, a website called Next Era Wrestling, and I'm like, everything should just be the same. Like my first ever radio show wasn't even called Wrestle Rant Radio. It was something else. So I'm like, everything should just be under one name. I just feel like that makes the most sense. And no one was thankfully using the Wrestle Rant name at that point. So I just kind of put it all under one umbrella, turned it into one kind of like big website, one go-to place for all wrestling coverage. And I've seen it kind of grow since then. It's important to know for people that are like trying to do that sort of thing, or really anything. It's always a marathon and not a sprint, as far as it just takes a long time to kind of build up that sort of stuff. Sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of the times it does. And I kind of fall in that category. And it's been a really fun process over the last 16 years. And just being consistent has been a big factor in the success as well, I would say.
And you mentioned Bleacher Report, Grant. You started at BR around the same time that you really started getting Wrestle Rant off the ground. So, how did you land your first opportunity with BR?
So I came across an article by them. The WWE Royal Rumble event was this past weekend. They had the Royal Rumble event in January of 2010, and I was looking up results from the show, and I found an article on Bleach Report. I had no idea what it was. Had just started out as like a blogging type website, like a year or two before that. I think Bleach Report started like 0807. And I read an article on there, and I saw a few months later that they were accepting new writers. Now the process is insanely different now. It's like been bought out by Turner Sports. It's like a massive thing now. So it's not as easy as it once was, 16 years ago at this point. But I sent in, like, they had applications for new writers. All you had to do was email this address with a writing sample. And I think I sent in 2 paragraphs about like something wrestling, fantasy wrestling booking sort of thing. Wasn't even anything coherent. And I got an email back over Memorial Day weekend, like maybe 2 days later, a few days later, saying I was accepted to write, and I could write really whatever I wanted, however much I wanted. It was really just, I mean, now there's much more of a structure, but back then it was really just a blogging thing and just, getting your name out there and just allowing people to give freedom to do whatever they want. No real editing process. I could hit publish and it would just go up right away. And it was definitely like dangerous, but like thankfully I didn't do anything dumb, or like I stayed with it and was kind of safe with what I did and wrote about and stuff. But like I wrote my first ever article for the site that weekend, and it got like 500 article like reads or something. And I was like, whoa. And like kept refreshing the page and seeing it kind of come up. And I was like, wow, this is like really cool. And it was like a cool feeling to see that people were actually reading what I was writing and people actually gave a crap and they were leaving comments and stuff. And that kind of fueled my motivation to do more of it with stuff that I would write about anyway. This was already stuff that I was doing on like social media, but now I was actually having an audience for it. And Bleacher Report provided me that opportunity. And I've been grateful for that ever since, and just remaining consistent because a lot of people were doing it back then. But because I stayed writing and like it went from hundreds of not staff writers, but contributors that they had at that point. Now we're down to 10. I think it's like 8 to 10 writers for the wrestling section anyway. That we have like a team of like staff writers for the website. So it's been a crazy journey, and I'm thankful every day for the opportunity they provided me and getting me to where I am today.
Yes, still at BR, still cooking at Bleacher Report in big 2026. Is it weird to think about that you started in 2010 and with that application and your fun little 2 paragraphs, and now millions upon millions later, we're in 2026, still going strong.
It is very crazy. It's even crazier to think because I tell people like when I go to like work events and stuff like networking stuff or whatever, people say, oh, who do you work for? Who do you write for? I say Bleacher Report. And they say, oh, how long you've been with them? And I say the last, I said, probably now it's been 16 years, but I would say 15 years, 14 years in the last couple of years, whatever. And they're like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm only at that point, I'm 30 now, but like, 29, 28, whatever. They're like trying to do the math in their head. I'm like, before they can even kind of compute it, I'm like, I started as a freshman in high school, early sophomore year of high school. I started early. It was, it's not like normal, so to speak. You can't really, maybe you could probably do that today, but it's a lot harder with any website, really. It was just a different time back in 2010. But what's even crazier than that is to think that, and I was the one that kind of realized this, but I hit 15 years with the website last spring. May is really my anniversary with when I started writing for them. Mm-hmm. I turned 30 2 weeks later. So I had been with them for 15 years. I've been alive for 30. So I'm a journalism guy, but I can't really do math, but I could do basic math. That's half of 30. So basically I've been writing and I've been with Bleacher Report for legit over half of my life, which is legit wild to think about. I think I spent more time in school, or I've spent almost this time. Now I've spent more time writing for the site than I have in school, which is really insane. So that still blows my mind to this day.
And so going back to school, yeah, incredible.
Thank you.
So to those that don't know Endicott, you complete 3 internships while you're there, 2 over your winter break, which is extended to 5 weeks so that you use the back 3 for internship.
Yeah.
And during the thesis, which you write during 2 semesters, you start it your first semester while you complete a 4-month internship. How did your Endicott internships, Graham, push you closer to what you wanted to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, they were really helpful. I mean, it's so great that they had that program, still have that program. A lot of schools I feel like wouldn't. And they also hook you up too. It's not like you do have to go look for them yourself, but they also like help you find them. They give you the resources to find them, tell you why it's important. The first one was great. I had done a few like here in the state, like at the New Haven Register, stuff like that, like basic newspaper stuff, which was cool. Like it was a little bit different. It was more so like organization stuff. It wasn't stuff that exactly what I expected. It was fine. It was okay. Some of the people I worked with were like miserable, and I'm like, God, do I want this to be me? Coming out of college, getting a job like this is crazy. But then really the turning point, what was most pivotal for me was the senior internship, when it's like the semester long one, like you had said, your first semester of senior year. Because I had done it, and Sherry Lynn, shout out to her. She's in charge of the program. I believe still is. Yes. She had hooked me up with an internship in Mass, I think Danvers, which is like 15 minutes from the school. I didn't have a car on campus, so I'd have to take like Ubers there and stuff, but it was so worth it. I did it at it was a sports internship. I forget the name of the place, but it was a sports internship. And obviously as a big wrestling guy. What was that? Gatehouse Media. Yes. Media. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. They're in Danvers. Great company. I think my roommate actually in college, Connor, shout out to Connor, had actually done an internship there a couple years prior for his freshman year one because he lives in Mass. But so I had to do a sports internship, and that was like the closest thing to what I knew. Like I'd rather do that than like hard news. I could do that, but that just doesn't really interest me. The sports stuff is closer to what I've already been doing, like with wrestling. It's not the same thing at all, but it's close enough. So it was such a great experience because it pushed me to do things that I was previously uncomfortable in doing or trying or experimenting with. So I'd have to go to games, which I'd already done a little bit with prior internships, but like all the stuff that like you have done and that you're far more familiar with and knowledgeable with, I'd have to try, like covering the games, talking to the athletes, and basic interview skills I could do and whatnot. I can interview people, but like knowing the rules of the game, like basketball, I know, but like lacrosse and some of these other things I was covering was like completely foreign territory to me, completely uncharted territory. And it was a lot of fun. And I got to know the guy that was my supervisor. He was great, really flexible, built a lot of great relationships with the coaches. It was fun to have to travel all over the state to go cover these games. And it was skills that I've taken to other stuff that I've done since then. Like if I can do that and not like fake it till you make it type thing, but like if I can kind of figure it out on the job, then I can apply that to other stuff with other stuff that I've covered since then and other athletes that I talked to. I talked to a hockey player a couple weeks ago, which was great. Jack Hughes from the NHL. He's actually in the Winter Olympics coming up. He was a great kid. I know very little about hockey, so I had to do all this research and kind of figure it out. And so that internship kind of started, kind of was my entryway into doing things that previously I probably would not have been as keen on doing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. All right. So you talk about getting comfortable and how the internships helped. I want to now talk about the job itself. So, Graham, how would you describe a current week in life? I know sometimes you're traveling, maybe sometimes you're more local.
Yeah.
But what is I don't know if normal is the word, but what is a regular week in the life like for journalist Graham Mermina?
Yeah, it's just a lot of writing. It's really just a lot of writing, a lot of covering, a lot of consuming content. With wrestling, I mean, it used to just be on like one day of the week. So I don't know what wrestling journalists, so to speak, were doing 20 years ago. But nowadays, there's so much of it. Like they have a different league. There's WWE, obviously, but there's AEW that's on Wednesdays and Saturdays on TNT and TBS. They get preempted by basketball a lot, actually, so they have to change their their start times quite a bit. But the WWE is on Mondays and Fridays. They have pay-per-views almost every other weekend, premium live events now on ESPN and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of covering the content in immediate, instant reaction too. So it's not like your average, like, 9 to 5. A lot of it is like, I can't even give you like specific hours. It's like I say it's a 24/7 thing. It is. A lot of that's my own fault because I want to do more. I want to watch more. And it's not like, do more, make more. It's not even really necessarily that. It's just like stuff that I like to do and building the brand and whatnot. But it's a lot of post-event coverage too. Like staying up until 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning sometimes is not like completely out of the ordinary. And then being back up by like 7 or 8 to do it all over again and getting like few hours of sleep. The travel weeks are even worse because like when I go to these shows, not like every week, it's like maybe once a month or every few months. It depends on the schedule. Like I should have been at the Rumble this past week, but they were in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to Saudi Arabia. I didn't even have the offer to go, but I didn't want to go there regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of nice to kind of be home and do all the writing and not have to worry about catching a flight or having to drive there. Like they were at MetLife a couple days before I saw you in August. And that was a swift travel process because, I'm not being in Connecticut, not that far from there. So that was easy. But like the flights really, like I'm not a big travel person. So working remotely is great for me. The BR offices, if I need to go there, are in New York City, which is great. I've been there a few times. It's an awesome facility. So yeah, it's a lot of remote work, but it's also a lot of, staying up late, early in the morning, deadlines by, 7 o'clock in the morning because we have all of our articles up by the first thing the next morning. During the day, consuming the news, reacting to the news, doing separate content for my own stuff. So it's hard to pinpoint what an exact day looks like, but it's really just always having your foot in the gas, having your, being on the pulse of what the news is going on, like what's going on, reacting to it, and then writing up an impromptu a piece that I may not have been planning on because something dropped and Vince McMahon is out of the company because he's involved in a lawsuit. And then it's like, okay, I got to deal with this. So it's a lot of reactionary stuff and a lot of late nights. And it's not something I recommend unless you're absolutely psycho and really, 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 really like it. Because it's not easy from that standpoint, but I've just gotten used to it, and I'm just a madman at this point. So I just accept the lifestyle for what it is.
I will come back on the advice part. I do want to have something in between there, and you've been addressing it this whole recording and this whole conversation, but I want to ask it specifically. So, just like yourself with wrestling, me with basketball, and many
Yep.
others with their early passion, you start out watching it as a young fan, and you get to school and you get the baseline coverage, and then you graduate and you get to do it for a career.
Mm-hmm.
So, how has your passion for wrestling changed now, covering it professionally versus watching it as a young fan?
That's a good question. I mean, it would be. I'm lucky. I'm lucky, and I also feel like because I started watching wrestling later, this kind of helped. I feel like I'm not. I'm definitely a little jaded towards some things, but I feel like I'm not as jaded because I have to watch so much wrestling. That would be a dream, and it still is a dream. It still is a dream even to this day. But as a kid, it'd be like, oh wow, that sounds amazing, and it is. But it also comes with a lot of things I just mentioned that don't make it as easy when you have to stay up and watch the shows. When I want to be watching something else or going out and doing this on a Friday night or a Saturday during the pay-per-view or going to this event, and I still do make time for that stuff. I try to do a better job of balancing the personal stuff with work stuff and wrestling stuff and whatnot. At one point when I didn't have as many different relationships and whatnot, and have a girlfriend and whatever, I was able to do it. Like in college, I didn't really, I mean, I had friends and stuff, but I was able to stay in the dorm and do a lot more covering. But it's a lot different now, and I don't want to sit back on a Monday to have to watch Raw all the time. I do it as for a job, and it could sometimes turn people bitter. And I've seen a lot of people where that's become the case. And I'm not saying that's not completely the case with me, but I feel like more so, I still really enjoy it. I would watch it. Like, there are certain events that are absolute garbage. And sometimes wrestling can be so bad. And people beg the question or ask the question, if you weren't covering this or if you weren't doing it as a job, would you still be watching it? And my answer is always yes, I would still be watching it. Maybe not as religiously as I do, or I would wait a couple of days to catch up on something because I still enjoy it. There's still something within me that likes the process of what wrestling entails, and also writing about it too. I would do it, maybe not for free. I'd have to find something to, pay the bills and stuff, but I would still be doing it to a certain extent because I enjoy it that much. So, I mean, it's become a lot more than I ever could have imagined because as a kid, there wasn't that much wrestling. And I would look forward to those days of having to watch it after school or before school or at night on a Friday night or whatever. Now I'd almost rather be doing anything else, not because I don't enjoy it, but because I have other passions and interests and other stuff I got going on. But it's just finding that balance, not letting it consume me, but also still having that, I don't know, childlike wonder. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, to a point where I can still enjoy it and I can kind of separate the two.
Yeah, it's kind of like how football fans are like, all right, yeah, we got Sundays, and then you get Thursdays, then you get Mondays,
Exactly,
and now we
yeah.
got Saturdays. It's like, all right, that's great. But also for the people that cover it for a career, it's like, oh, okay, cool. So we're going to travel on Thursday, then we're going to travel on Friday, then we're going to travel on Saturday. And because I get to do something every day this week, we're going to travel on Sunday too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But when you do love something, like that, it is a lot. But then at the end of the day, when you finally do go to sleep or you're too hyped up to slow down because of either something you watched, maybe you had a post that hit some big numbers, or maybe you're just you're really, you take a minute to enjoy it. Like you can't turn it off. And I feel like when you really like what you're doing, right, like that's just going to stay with you.
No, absolutely. No, it's definitely going to stay with you. I just feel like that's something you can't lose that. And I don't know if it's an intentional thing, but that part of you that still enjoys what you're doing and what you're watching or what you're covering, especially as a sports journalist or whatever it might be. Like I would love to know, like if I could speak to like a movie critic or something like that. Like, do you still like when you go to watch a movie to review it? Do you still go in there enjoying it, or are you just trying to pick it apart for your, whatever it is, for your work or for your review or whatever? I could review something and be critical about it, or even just flat out crap all over it, but still thoroughly enjoy. I could still look forward to the next week. Like, all right, that was garbage, but hopefully next week's better. And a lot of people are like, I just can't do this. This isn't for me anymore. I've kind of outgrown this. I'm on to the next thing. And that's just human nature. So it's completely understandable. But to not let that little spark of, I don't know if interest is the right word, but that enthusiasm where you're still a fan at heart. There's a lot of people in this space and just in any space with almost anything that aren't fans, like maybe people that are basketball players that really are just doing it for a job. They're just doing it because they're good at it, and they're at a point now where they don't really have anything else, and they're just like, I'm just going to keep doing this, even though I'm at a point now where I just hate doing it. I know there's wrestlers that are that same way, that are burnt out on it. That's a human emotion. I'm not quite at that point. I'm only 30. I'll give it a little bit more time. It might get to that point. Thankfully, I'm not there yet, which I'm grateful over.
I was actually just about to make the point that you just made, that because we have been talking a little bit. It's funny because you and I, our conversations have covered many bounds through the many meals we've had, episodes we were in the same room for, and just general conversations. And today was the first time with basketball. And I just want to kind of finish on that by saying that you hit it home exactly. And I could think of at least a dozen guys that either quit, retired, or just stopped trying because they were doing it for the money. They got their money. They're burnt out. They're done.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the NFL now, obviously, a lot of that to do with player safety. But there are guys that retire at 23 and 25 before ever suffering an injury. And obviously you also see, and this is the biggest one, and this is the most relatable to anybody. There's child actors who we all remember from the 90s and 2000s, and then you watch a show and you're like, oh, I've never seen this person. Oh, but the show is very popular. What happened? Then you see they have no credits afterwards, or maybe that was their only role, and it's like, oh, what are they doing? What's happening now? And so obviously, I guess closing this loop before we get to advice and finish up, Bridget Mendler, I'm not sure if you've been following what she's been doing, but she was on Good Luck Charlie. She's a big-time star on that show, very popular. Then she had multiple songs get like 100 million YouTube streams, and then Spotify. Then she was in school getting, I think it was a Harvard degree, and now all of a sudden she's funding a $500 million program.
I think I know what you're talking about. So I didn't watch Good Luck Charlie. That was after my time. I think I stopped watching Disney in 2008 or 2009. Like
around then that I think that it started, but
she had blonde hair at the time, right? I think I've seen it on Twitter. Like, look at what she's doing now, because she's like a friggin' doctor or whatever you say.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So it's like you do something, and if the passion's not there, you want to chase something else. I think it's a great example too. With that one extreme example, though, and it can be true of anybody. You're not stuck in what you're doing. Of course, we are here talking about that your passion for wrestling. I'm not trying to deter anybody, because my last question is going to be about advice.
Yeah.
But I think it's also clear that do something as long as you love it and you're able. But if you do want to switch, you're never pigeonholed into staying in one career for your whole life.
Absolutely.
People get grad degrees in their 50s. People change careers in their 70s, even if they're not ready to retire. And, there's always an opportunity to find what you believe your true calling is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I feel like the opportunity is the key word with, never feel that it's too late to chase something that you think might be worth a shot. If it's completely illogical, then maybe not. But like, if it's something that you have a passion for, you're like, I've always wanted to try this, but I just don't think I'd be good at it, or I don't think there'd be an audience for it. I've heard that so many times. It's like, bro, just try it though. And you got to give it time. That's the thing. You got to give it real commitment. And there's a chance that it may not work. There might be a bigger chance that it might not work, but at least you could say you tried, and you don't have, this is like basic advice, but at least you could say you tried, and you don't have the regret of like, well, what if, but why not just give it that college try, or whatever the expression is. I don't see why not. If I wanted to, if I thought that I had what it takes to be a basketball player, I would try out for the basketball team at Endicott, but I knew I couldn't do it, didn't have any interest, so I didn't do that. I actually called a basketball, it's funny you say what you mentioned earlier, that you were broadcasting for Endicott. Literally a few months right before Acceptance Students Day, when I met you, I was already doing the podcast at the radio show. This is a complete side story. I'll make this quick.
Sure.
But Ellie Pye, I think for whatever reason, the person in charge of the basketball program at Endicott or whatever reached out to her asking if she had anyone that she knew anyone on the radio station that can maybe fill in last minute to call a basketball game. And it was a football game and then a basketball game like the second time. And because I was the closest thing that she had to anything that resembled sports, she asked me, and I was like, yes, I know nothing, but I will go into it, giving it the old try. I think this would be fun. I always liked being a commentator. Like, I like trying to do that with wrestling, like pretending I was a commentator on the sidelines. It's basically what I was doing in the press box or in the announce box, the booth that day for the big championship football game and then a basketball game a couple months later. Not saying I was great or anything, but it was a fun process. And I can always say that I tried that. And then I gave it, I just take every opportunity. And if the opportunity is not there, try to chase it down. And you never know what might happen. You never know who you might meet, and you never know what could happen out of something that you try. If nothing happens, at least you expected it. But something could happen, and it could end up being something really cool. So yeah, never feel like you're pigeonholed. I feel like that's a great piece of advice. You're never stuck to one thing forever, no matter how much you hate it or are good at it, whatever it is. Just try to branch out, because burnout is going to kill you more than anything.
Yeah, honestly, I think that covers any other questions I could have had on the subject of career. I mean, spot on. I never knew that. That's honestly really cool that you did that. Now I gotta get in the booth to do some play-by-play for a wrestling match. I've called 10 sports. I've worked 11 sports. I've been asked. There have been 13 that have come up. I've worked 11 sport. Wrestling is not on the list.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to bring it there.
Hey, listen, Zach, you never know. For some reason, I'm running a wrestling show, which is not my forte, but if I ever was, and I needed an announcer, even they may not have the knowledge quite yet, I might call upon you, because I know you have the skills. You carry yourself like a star out there, and you're so great at what you do. I might just you never know. You never know. You never know what opportunities might arise. And that's another thing I stress too. Even if you don't feel like you'd be good at it, like randomly, like recently, my girlfriend was in a play. She likes doing acting and stuff. She got asked by, I had some connections at Quinnipiac. They were looking for someone to sing the national anthem. That's not something she does. And I thought she would say no. She's like, yeah, why not? I'm like, that's my attitude. I didn't think you'd share that same attitude, but you did it. And she was great at it, and she liked it. And she's done it a second time since then. So you just never know, unless it's such a colossal, there's such a colossal margin for error, and your life is over, which is rarely ever the case. It always is worse in your mind than it will ever be in reality, for the most part.
Always.
Just give it a try. You just never know. But yes, Zach, I might call upon you in the future to call a wrestling match, because I feel like you knock it out of the park.
Just like that chair that they're going to grab from Stan's going to knock that guy out of the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
3, 2, 1, game. All right.
Yep.
No, not game. I got all my terminology. All right. So we move on. Couple questions that have absolutely nothing to do with what we've talked about here today. So the best part, my favorite takeaway, by the way, this is from the debut episode of Zach with an H, all the way back in the spring of 2024. Shout out Steve Max. Mr. Simon Says he was the first guest. I asked him, where's the best takeout you've ever had? He said, takeout Chinese food in Utah when I was I was doing a jazz halftime show. So that's still my favorite answer. It just feels extremely random that Salt Lake City has great Chinese takeout. Nothing against them. As my only food knowledge of Utah, having not yet been there, is that the MJ pizza in 97, where 6 guys delivered a 3 a.m. pizza, and he got sick and played through the flu. But
oh my God. Here's
the food question for today. Start, bench, cut. It's a debut question. Cantaloupe, strawberries, bananas.
Oof. I would, of those 3, I would cut strawberries.
See strawberries.
I would start bananas. And what was the other? I know cantaloupe, but what was the other term?
Cantaloupe, strawberries, bananas. You start one, you bench one.
Cut one and bench one, right? Okay. I'm sorry. I would start bananas.
Yep.
I would bench cantaloupe and cut strawberries.
Anything against strawberries? Is it the process of getting them ready?
I just don't like them. I'm weird. I honestly, none of those I would jump to I'll go eat. I'm more of an apple guy. If it's mixed in with something, straight up, I would eat a banana. Like cantaloupe, yeah, I'd probably try. Strawberries, probably definitely not. I mean, I've had strawberries. I just don't like them. It's nothing. No, I'm not strawberry-ist. I just don't personally enjoy them. But I see the appeal.
Okay. Craziest interview that you've landed?
Craziest interview I've landed? About 4 years ago. I mean, wrestling-wise, John Cena. that was completely crazy, because it wasn't even for wrestling. He was on a show called Wipeout, which was on back in the day. Great show. They brought it back a few years ago, and he was on the show, and I'm like, can I try to interview him for this? Because usually if they have something to promote, that's a good reason to talk to someone. They'll be willing to talk. And I got in contact with someone at I don't know, TBS or whatever network it was on, and they got me Cena. It was insane. It was they actually were like, it's not going to happen. Then they got back to me a couple of weeks later, were like, oh, it's going to happen. I'm like, this is crazy. And it was all during COVID too, so that kind of helped, where a lot of people were traveling less. But in general, I'm not sure. The 2 names that would come to mind, one is Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
He was on the Packers at that point, about 4 years ago. He was promoting something for like a campaign or whatever. And they reached out to me because they knew I wrote for Bleacher Report, but like they didn't know I'm not the football guy. So but I'm like, he's a big name. I know who he is. He's got a big following. This would be a great opportunity. Even though I don't know exactly what I'm doing, I will find out what I'm doing. Like I will figure it out. I will figure it out and do it because I feel like this would be awesome. And he ended up being cool. The process was great. The article turned out great. And I was really nervous how it would turn out, but I got a lot of great feedback. And it was really cool that I got to do that. And that kind of spawned some other like sports people that I've talked to. So it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it turned out to be a great opportunity. And then the following summer, I was in Nashville. First time there, good town. I was there for a WWE event, and they were doing a tryout for new wrestlers, like rookies and stuff, looking for potential signees. In WWE in the last couple of years, they're doing like an NIL thing, like next in line program, where they look for college athletes and sign. They're trying to sign a lot more athletes out of college, excuse me, as opposed to like just straight up wrestlers that are wrestling on like the lower level circuit and stuff. So by trying to inspire these, college athletes to join professional wrestling, they had, who was it? Dwight Howard, I think it was. Dwight Howard was there. And I'm like, I know who he is. My buddy RJ, again, shout out to RJ, know who RJ is.
Yeah.
He was there with me. He knows all about Dwight Howard. And I'm like, wow. Like I knew he was a big deal. I didn't know he was that big of a deal. And one of the PR people for WWE, knowing I was with Bleacher Report, was like, hey, do you want to go talk to him about like blah, 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 about wrestling or whatever? Because he's a big wrestling fan. I'm like, sure. So I had to come up with questions on the spot. This was like a 3-minute thing. Had no idea it was coming. And it turned out great. Guy towered over me.
Nice.
And it was crazy. It was a surreal experience. And to me, like a, excuse me, a bench of accomplishment, like something I can be like, kind of like proud of or whatever. I'm trying to be proud of a lot of the stuff that I do. But if I can share something like that with like my dad, who knows like very little about wrestling, or like my non-wrestling friends that may know who this person is and they think it's cool, then I know that I've like, okay, I did something like I've like made it. If they know who this person is and I got to talk to him and I get to look like the cool guy for a day because nothing I do is cool at all. If I get to talk to this guy and they think it's cool, then I think I've done something. I've got to accomplish something. And he fell in that category. So I guess Dwight Howard and Devontae Adams and those are the two, and John Cena. They're probably the top three. There might be other ones I'm not thinking of, but those would probably be the main ones.
I would say I see, but nobody sees John Cena. So I'll just say I see.
There you go. Yes.
All right.
Exactly. I was on the phone with him, so I literally did not see him. It was not a Zoom thing or in person.
Well,
So
I saw an invisible voice was just holding an invisible. There was just an invisible voice in your ear?
It was basically just a one-sided interview, which was the toughest one of my entire career because he didn't say anything because he can't see him or hear him.
That's right. All right. So, Graham, a pleasure having you on today, running through career, starting early. Obviously, some crazy name drops over the course of this episode. But tell everybody, where can we find Graham Matthews and his work?
Yeah, just look up really just a quick Google search, Graham Matthews, Graham Armina, but really anything Wrestle Rant. I'm obviously on Bleacher Report, WrestleRant.com. All my stuff is there, all over social media at Wrestle Rant or on Instagram at Graham Matthews, Graham Armina again, or Graham GSM Matthews. I specifically use because it's I'm sure there's a lot of Graham Matthews out there. They're both two English names. Like I've used Matthews because Graham Armina I noticed was a lot harder for people to pronounce. And Matthews was just an easier last name. And it's also the last name of my favorite wrestler of all time. So I kind of stole it from him. Soon after I started writing for Bleacher Report, adopted a pen name. And now I just use it for pretty much everything wrestling related, to the point now where I meet people in person or people that I work with or I go to events. And I have to write down for like certain events what my real last name is because they need my ID and stuff. They're like, whoa. I've known you for like 10 years. That's not your real last name. I'm like, it's not. I mean, it's not like something completely, it's the same letter, but it's not the same last name. And at least my first name is the same. So that's not drastically different, but nice fun fact for you there. But yeah, anything Wrestle Rant. And like I said, Zach, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you giving me the platform here. Always a great time chatting with you and catching up. And I'm sure I'll see you in person again soon as well.
Absolutely. So Graham Matthews, Wrestle Rant. There it is.
And go Goals, by the way, as well.
Yeah, go Goals. This has been the Zach with an H pod, and we will be back again real soon. Take care.